Okay, tonight is Matthew chapter 27.
When the morning was come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate the governor. Then Judas, which had betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned, repented himself, and brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned in that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? See thou to that. And he cast down the pieces of silver in the temple, and departed, and went and hanged himself.
In the previous chapter, we had the part where Jesus was taken and arrested and betrayed by Judas, and Peter had denied him while standing around the fire. All right, so all that was happening at that particular night. And now this is the next morning. Okay, so when the morning has come, okay, and then now they're figuring out what to do. They want to find a way to put him to death now. So they bring him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Only the Romans were permitted to give a death sentence. Okay, so Pontius Pilate being he was the governor, but he was from Rome, because Rome was an occupation of that land at the time, so that's why they brought him there. They were looking for him to sentence him to death. As the Jews, they really couldn't do that. Like just over whatever they had against him. I mean, they could, I guess, beat him up or whip him or whatever, but they couldn't do a death penalty. That required the governor, Pontius Pilate, to do that. So that's why they brought him there. All right. So now you get a little side note here. It says, now remember we read about Judas as the betrayer. Okay. So now he's obviously having remorse over this. Right. And it's been said, I've read or heard that perhaps Judas didn't understand what was really going to happen. Right. That they said, well, he was trying to push. And this is just people supposing, right, that he was trying to push Jesus into like taking a more active role and basically, like forcing himself on the people, in other words, be more of a fighting Messiah than a peaceful Messiah. So he figured if he did this, it would like force him to react, because now they're going to take him and threaten him to put him to death and so forth. And so when he saw that they were actually going to follow through with it, and he was going to let it happen, and then he felt sorry, he was remorseful and guilty, and realized his role in this. Now, again, that's not written anywhere in the Bible, right? That's what people have supposed, because here he was all gung ho, which is just the night before, ready to collect his 30 pieces of silver, and he got the money, and he betrayed him, and it was no problem. And now the next morning, he's like, he's trying to back out of it, right? As you can see, it says he went and he repented and brought the 30 pieces of silver back. I guess basically said, here, I'd like to return this betrayal, all right? Here's the money back, and can we just forget this ever happened, all right? But they were not interested in that, all right? So it says, I've sinned, I've betrayed innocent blood, and they said, basically, who cares, all right? I mean, it's over and done with now. So he threw the piece of silver down in the temple, and then he went out and killed himself, all right? He went out and hanged himself, all right? And in fact, in one of the other accounts of it, it gives a little more graphic description of how he did it, that he basically went over, I guess, to like a cliff and tied the rope around his neck, and then he just dove off the cliff. And so if you can picture what would happen, he kind of just like pulls you apart, So that's how it was described, all right? But he was just very remorseful in realizing what he had done, and so he couldn't live with himself, so he killed himself.
And the chief priests took the silver pieces and said, It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, because it is the price of blood. And they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Wherefore that field was called the field of blood unto this day. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that was valued, whom they of the children of Israel did value, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord appointed me.
As we said, Judas came in, he basically dropped the money, here's your 30 piece of silver, and he went out and killed himself. Well, now the chief priests, I mean, there's nothing they can do about him, but now they got these 30 pieces of silver laying there, so what are we going to do with this? I mean, I guess they didn't even feel good about taking it and just putting it in their pocket, so to speak. They said they called it blood money, right? So they said, well, it's not lawful to put this in the treasury. It's the price of blood. It's the blood money, because they paid it out for him to betray Jesus. They could put him to death, and now here even Judas committed suicide over it. So they said, yeah, this is like not money that we can just, I guess there's no entry in the treasury or no category in the accounting. This was money that was blood money or something, right? They didn't want that in the treasury. So they said, well, what should we do with it? So it says they talked it over, and they decided to buy a field or a plot of ground where they could bury people who didn't have their own plot of ground, right? And it was referred to as a potter's field. Today, occasionally the same kind of a ground thing on a purpose is referred to that way sometimes, right? If like people can't afford their own plot of ground, let's say, and then or actually if like maybe they have no family, somebody, you find somebody who's homeless and has died, and so they just bury him in some field with a bunch of other bodies, and they call that the potter's field, right? And that's what that's based on, right? It's just a place for strangers or people that don't really have anybody to bury them or take care of their body or whatever. Okay? The type of ground that we were talking about was not a good kind of ground, as it was used to make potter's clay, and so it wasn't really good for anything else. So they may as well use it to bury bodies that have no place else to go. Mm-hmm. So I mean, actually, it was kind of a noble thing that they did, and even used the money for that, even though it was all underhanded and whatever up to this point. But they said, well, let's I guess put this to some good purpose. So they went out and wanted to do it this way. People who don't have money or anybody to bury them properly, they can still be buried here. Then, it's also pointed out that the whole using the 30 pieces of silver to buy the potter's field also corresponds to a prophecy, right? As you see in verse 9, it says that then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremiah, saying they took 30 pieces of silver, the price for those valued, whom they of the children of Israel did value, and gave them to the potter's field, as the Lord appointed me, right? So it's saying that there was some exchange of 30 pieces of silver for potter's field.
And Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Art thou the king of the Jews? And Jesus said unto him, Thou sayest. And when he was accused of the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then said Pilate unto him, Hearest thou not how many things they witness against thee? And he answered him to never a word, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly.
All right, so now he's being questioned by the governor, right, by Pontius Pilate. And so you see the basic question. It says, Are you the king of the Jews? Because that's what they were accusing him of, right? They're saying he was the king, or that he was trying to take over the kingdom. The word that sometimes uses insurrection, right? It's like you're trying to take over the government. So he says, Are you the king of the Jews? And so you see what Jesus says. Well, if that's what you say, you said it, I didn't, right? And so that's basically the kind of response that he gave, right? And anybody else bringing up anything, he had nothing to say. Right, and if you remember, we've referenced the prophecy of he's supposed to be like the sheep brought before the slaughter, right? So in other words, he was just silently going through the motions and waiting for them to kill him, right? So he wasn't going to argue his case, because truly he wasn't trying to talk them out of it, because that was what was supposed to happen. They were supposed to kill him. So as we read in the previous chapter, when Peter jumped in with the sword and was trying to, cut off the ear of the serpent or whatever, what are you doing? He says, this is supposed to happen, so don't be doing this. And so he wasn't looking to put up a defense, and so he was just standing there and letting them say whatever they wanted to. And so now the governor, doesn't really understand any of this, and so that's why he's saying people are saying things against you, and you're not saying anything. What's up with that? All right, it would be like if you went to court today, all right, and the defendant was put on the stand and said nothing, all right. You'd be like, well, don't you have anything to say? Or the defense attorney put up no defense, all right. You would lose automatically, all right. So because the prosecution have all their witnesses and the defense has no witnesses, so how could you possibly win your case? So that's why he's saying this is not right. That's why he says he marveled. Something's wrong here. You should be defending yourself, but that's not what he was trying to do. He was just letting them do what they had to do, because that's what he came for.
Now at that feast the governor was wont to release unto the people a prisoner whom they would. And they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will ye that I release unto you, Barabbas, or Jesus which is called Christ? for he knew that for envy they had delivered him.
They had this interesting little custom, all right, that they did, and quite frankly, I don't know why they would have developed this kind of a custom, all right, but they had a custom where they, every year, I think at the time of the Passover, just for whatever reason, they would let one prisoner go free, right? So, I don't know, you got somebody in jail for murder, I mean, why would you, who are you doing a favor to by letting the murderer go free? But, that this is what they did, right? That they said that they would let somebody go free, and so Pilate decides he's going to use this to get Jesus out of this, because as it says towards the end of that, it says he knew that for envy they had delivered him. In other words, he's thinking, yeah, this guy really doesn't do anything wrong. These Jews are just envious of him, that everybody likes him and looks up to him, so that's why they're looking for me to kill him. So he decides to take really the roundabout way out of it. It would have been perhaps more of a backbone to just say, no, this is wrong, and he's done anything wrong, we're releasing him. But instead he says, all right, yeah, let's go through our prisoner release program and see if we can let him out that way. So he says so in 16 it says they had a notable prisoner called Barabbas, all right, who it says in other parts of the scripture was a thief and a murderer and so forth, so he deserved to be there. That's why he says it's a notable prisoner. And so Pilate says, okay, who do you want to release, Barabbas or Jesus, right? He probably picked the worst guy who was in there, figuring that it's a no-brainer then, right? I mean, if you pick somebody who, was just in jail for some minor thing, then maybe they would say, oh, let him go. But here, let's pick the worst guy we can find. So him or Jesus, come on now, this is an easy choice here. Who do you want to have let out into your society? The killer or this guy who they just don't like the way he talks from the scripture, all right? I mean, who do you want to have released? So that's why he presented it that way, because figuring that that's why the people would take him off the hook, and then they would make the choice, and then Jesus would go free.
When he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, Have thou nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor answered and said unto them, Whether of the twain will ye that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate saith unto them, What shall I do then with Jesus, which is called Christ? They all say unto him, Let him be crucified. And the governor said, Why? What evil hath he done? But they cried out the more, saying, Let him be crucified.
Right, so in the midst of this, as a little side note, in verse 19, it points out that Pilate had a little warning given to him by his wife. His wife apparently had a dream the night before and said, that told her that Jesus was an innocent man and that he shouldn't be executed. So his wife said unto him, saying, have nothing to do with this just man. I've suffered many things in a dream because of him. So the word, God is warning me that we shouldn't follow through with this. So you really should just back off and not be involved in this at all. All right, but really, I guess it was too late in the process. I mean, he's already got it rolling at this point, and so now it continues. It says, even though it would have seemed like an obvious choice, Jesus or Barabbas. Says the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask for Barabbas, right? And so they went around and said, I call them the lobbyists, right? The lobbyists today in Washington, they go and tell the congressman how to vote, all right? And so that's what they're doing here. They go around telling him how to vote, all right? This is when he says what you want, yell Barabbas, okay? Yell Barabbas. So they went around and they did this, and so in 21 the governor asked the question, okay, which one should I release? And I'm sure he's waiting to hear the words Jesus, and instead everyone yells Barabbas, and he's like, what? In 22 he says, well, what do you want me to do with Jesus? Kill him, let him be crucified, all right? And so again, any logical person looking at this and say, wait a minute, what is this about here? I mean, so you want the killer to go free, and this guy who said he's the king of the Jews, we should kill him. What's up with that? Right? That's why in 23 it says, what evil has he done? I mean, what's he done that you want to kill him? And they just cried a little more, saying, let him be crucified. All right? So but obviously they were repeating back what they were told to say, and so the chief priests and elders went around and got them riled up and got them to yell out, let Barabbas go, kill Jesus. right? So they were so easily led to do this, but yet they're participating in the whole plan now to bring about this death sentence for Jesus.
When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it. Then answered all the people and said, His blood be on us and on our children. Then released he Barabbas unto them, and when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified.
It says that Pilate tried to sway the multitude here and pick the right guy here, right? I mean, there's only two choices, and you made the wrong pick here, right? So, but when he saw that it wasn't going anywhere, so now he does something in front of the multitude that this was the source of a saying that comes down to today, right? That he stood in front of the multitude and washed his hands in front of them. I'm washing my hands of this, all right? And so, it means, in other words, I have nothing to do with this. This is your choice, and I'm washing my hands of it, and I'm getting out of it. And like I said, that comes down to today, all right? When you want to walk away from situations, and I'm washing my hands of that situation, and I'm not going to have anything more to do with it. So that's where that comes from, all right? So he does that. He says, I am innocent of the blood of this just person, all right? So yeah, he knows that there's no real reason to put him to death. So he says, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm washing my hands of it. So you all do what you want. And in saying that I'm innocent of the blood of this just person, again, you can see what the frame of mind that people are in. When 25, they throw in, let his blood be on us and on our children, So. In other words, we don't care, we don't care. Just to kill him, let his blood be on us and our children too, right? And some people look at this and then they say, that these were the Jews doing this, all right? And so when Jews through history have had a difficult time, at times people sometimes look back to this and say, well, they said let it be on us and our children, so that they said in essence they were calling the curse upon themselves, all right? But again, whether everything that happened to the Jews was from this or not, I mean, people point to this, they said, let it be on us and on our children, right? So they were calling for the blood to be on them. And so again, a very reckless and inappropriate thing to do, but this is what they did. Okay, and so finally in 26, so he's, you want Barabbas, so we'll let him go then, all right? That's who you picked. It says, and when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified, and scourged means whipped, all right? So I mean that was part of it, all right? So part of the responsibility, I guess, right, for everybody, he had to whip him, and then it's okay, now I'll take him away to be crucified. So he went ahead with what everybody wanted, even though that was not the right thing to do. He knew it wasn't the right thing to do, but of course it's what God intended all along, so therefore it did come together that way.
Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the common hall and gathered unto him the whole band of soldiers, and they stripped him and put on him a scarlet robe. And when they had platted a crown of thorns, they put it upon his head, and a reed in his right hand, and they bowed the knee before him, and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spit upon him, and took the reed, and smote him on the head. And after that they had mocked him, they took the robe off from him, and put his own raiment on him, and led him away to crucify him.
This part here, I mean, this is the part that makes it sound extraordinarily cruel, all right? That again, it's one thing that he was put to death and he was innocent, all right? But just to rub it in more, okay, you see what those verses just said, all right? So the soldiers took him in the halls, and they put on him a scarlet robe and a crown of thorns, and gave him a reed. In other words, you're the king. Well, let's dress you like a king. Here's your king's robes. Here's your crown, but it was thorns. All right, so you know how sharp thorns are. So they put it on his head, and they pushed it down so that it started to bleed. Here's your staff. Oh, okay, and now and so now they're bowing their knees, saying, "Oh, here's the king, hi your majesty," hail is the king. All right, in other words, they're mocking him and so forth. And so, like I said, that to me was the really cruel part. Right, was bad enough they're going to execute him, but now we're going to make fun of him, mock him, spit on him, torture him. All right, and all these kind of things. As they spit on him, they took the reed and smote him on the head. All right, so just being nasty about the whole thing. Okay, so like I said, there was no purpose in that other than just to be mean, right? And now it was foretold that this kind of thing would happen, so again, it's not that it was a surprise to God, right? But just looking at it from a human perspective, I mean, it was unnecessarily cruel, I think, to do that. And so when they were done having a good time with this, so then in 31 it says, so then they took off that robe and gave him back his own clothes, and now we'll continue with the execution, taking away to crucify him, right? So like I said, when I read it that way, I can tell that other part really was unnecessary, right? I mean, Pilate just said take him away to be crucified, but yet they had to throw this part in also.
And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. And when they were come unto a place called Golgotha, that is to say, a place of a skull, they gave him vinegar to drink, mingled with gall, and when he had tasted thereof, he would not drink. And they crucified him, and parted his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, they parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots.
As they made their way toward the place where the crucifixion was going to take place, they actually made the prisoners carry their own cross, right? Or at least the heavy part of it, so the big wooden part that was going to stand on the ground, they had to carry themselves. So you can see them like dragging it basically down the road to where they're going to be crucified. So again, imagine that you're already on your way to be executed and you got to carry your own thing. It would be like if you were going to be killed in the electric chair, you have to drag your own chair into there to do it. Okay, so he was bringing the cross there, but as he went, as the story is told, that it was actually too much for him, and he kind of fell down and couldn't really go any further. And so when they realized he wasn't going to be able to make it even down there with that, so they just pulled somebody at random out of the audience named Simon, and Simon of Cyrene, and they said, okay, you carry that for him, right? This way we can get this done. So that's what he's known for. See, the Simon of Cyrene, he's the one that carried the cross for Jesus, right? So all of that is encapsulated in verse 32 here, right? It says, as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. But that was why, because it says that Jesus, he couldn't carry it anymore, so they got this other guy to carry it for him. Okay. Right, and so eventually they come to the place of the crucifixion, which is called Golgotha, right, also known as the place of the skull. Right, so that's so Golgotha is the name of that place where they were actually going to do the crucifixion. Okay, so upon arriving there, they gave him vinegar to drink mixed with gall, right, which sounded particularly nasty. Right, and so this is when tasted that. So if you're probably we give them water, if they give them this nasty stuff. All right, and so they went ahead and nailed him to the cross, as we know. All right, and see, and that's another thing that doesn't go into too much detail really in the scripture at all. But I pointed out to other occasions that it's easy to say he was crucified. It's easy to say he's put on the cross, as if he's put up there with Velcro or something, right? But it's not like that, right? I mean, they took spikes and they pounded it through his hands and through his feet, right? And that's how he was attached to the board, and then the whole thing is pulled up, and stood upright, right? So that was the scene, and so I guess I usually point that out just so we can appreciate what he did for us, right? And to understand the pain and the suffering that was part of this, right? And so as this is going on, it just points out that they were casting lots for his garments, right? So I guess I find it hard to believe that they would want that's like a souvenir or something, but I guess maybe some of the garments were useful. So they like throwing dice, right? So they played a game, and the winner gets this piece of clothing, and the winner gets that piece of clothing. So they just kind of did it that way. But even that was part of a prophecy, right? As you can see, it says they parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots, right? So that's in Psalm 22, right? It just says that, and so that was a prophecy which is fulfilled here.
And sitting down, they watched him there, and set up over his head his accusation, written, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then were there 2 thieves crucified with him, one on the right hand, and another on the left. And they that passed by reviled him, wagging their heads, and saying, "Thou that destroyest the temple, and buildest it in 3 days, save thyself. If thou be the Son of God, come down from the cross."
And again, we keep commenting on the different things that made up this scene, and part of it is people actually watched, all right? It was like a spectator thing also, right? To see the criminals put to death in this way. And, I mean, I guess when they execute people today, people are invited to come and see if they were affected by the crime, but this was out in the open, so anybody could watch. And unlike today's executions, where it's basically and it's done, this was over a period of time. I mean, they nailed them up there and just let them suffer until they died. It could take hours, right? So they were there watching this happen, right? In 36, right? And now 37 talks about I guess for each person that was being executed, they put a little sign up on the top of the cross to say what the crime was, all right? So I guess if it was, to being killed for murder, the murderer, or a thief, or whatever, right? So in this case, it says, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews," right? That was what they put up there, because that's really all he was accused of, that he, about saying he was the King of the Jews. Now, you may remember from one of the other Gospels that some of the people, when they saw that, they first told Pilate, "No, that sign's wrong," right? That it should say, "He said he was the King of the Jews." In other words, he's not my king. I don't want saying Jesus King of the Jews. It should say, "He said he was the King of the Jews," but Pilate said, "Get lost." I made a sign, and that's what's staying up there. So. Now in 38, it introduces the two thieves that are also being crucified, one on the left and one on the right, right? Now, of course, they were being crucified, they were killed for actual crimes, right? And I guess they were thieves, right? So they were thieves and they're being put to death for that, right? And it doesn't say it it doesn't say it in this gospel, but these are the thieves that they were speaking to him, all right? And the one was saying, "Hey, why don't you, if you're really the Son of God, why don't you rescue all of us?" And then the other one said, "Come on, what's the matter with you? He hasn't done anything wrong. We deserve to be here, but he hasn't done anything wrong." And so then he addresses Jesus and saying, "Well, Lord, when you come into your kingdom, remember me." And then Jesus said to him, "This day you'll be with me in paradise." All right, so here he saved his soul just by that exchange with Jesus while they were hanging on the cross. All right, so these are the two thieves that were being killed with him. So any picture you see of people drawing it, you always see that. You see like Jesus in the middle, and there's one on each side, and that's where this comes from. Those were the two thieves on either side of him. So it points out, I like the description of this in 39. It says that they that pass by revile him, wagging their heads, all right? So wagging their heads, all right, and saying, "Come on, you just a couple days ago you were saying you could destroy the temple and build it back up in 3 days. So if you're all that powerful, then save yourself now. So that thou be the Son of God, come down from the cross, and then we'll believe." It doesn't say here that. I think another one says that. "Yeah, come down from the cross, and then we'll believe you." Now, would they have believed him? Of course not, right? I mean, they saw him raise the dead. They saw him, somebody who couldn't walk, they got up and walked. The blind could see, right? So it was just about demonstrating some kind of a supernatural power. They would have already been convinced. So, but yes, they were saying, "Come on, if you're the Son of God, yeah, come down from the cross, and then we'll believe you." But again, that would have defeated the whole purpose. Going up to that point, he was supposed to be crucified. If he would have come down, then the whole thing, then the devil wins then if he would have come down from the cross.
Likewise also the chief priests, mocking him with the scribes and elders, said, "He saved others, himself he cannot save. If he be the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusted in God, let him deliver him now, if he will have him, for he said, I am the Son of God." The thieves also, which were crucified with him, cast the same in his teeth.
The chief priests, everybody's mocking him, saying, "Come on, he saved others, but he can't save himself." And, he told people they were saved. He told people that their sins were forgiven, and he brought somebody back from the dead, and he can't save himself. And so in 42 it says, if he's the King of Israel, let him come down now from the cross, and we'll believe him. All right, but yeah, would they believe him? No, they wouldn't have believed him. And, they were just trying to goad him into this. And like I said, if he would have done that, then the devil wins, because it wasn't about saving his life here. So because what would have happened if he was a human here? So if he would have come down from the cross that day, it just would have meant he would have lived a few more years, another 30 years or 40 years. But the whole plan of salvation is defeated then. So that's why really it was necessary for this to happen. So he wasn't going to let them goad him into doing anything like that. As he said in the previous chapter, if I want to save myself, I could talk to my Father. He'll send thousands of angels to save me. So I don't need you cutting off people's ears with swords. I got to get the whole army of angels here to save me if that was what it was about. But that's not what it's about. I'm here to be crucified. Right? And so it's just more than saying he trusted in God, let it deliver him now, and so forth. And saying, prove it to us now. If you're the Son of God, come off the cross, and then we'll believe you. But it wouldn't have been the case anyway, and that wasn't what he came to do.
Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land unto the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Some of them that stood there, when they heard that, said, This man calleth for Elias. And straightway one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with vinegar and put it on a reed and gave him to drink. The rest said, Let be, let us see whether Elias will come to save him.
All right, so at this point it says from the 6th hour there was darkness over the land until the 9th hour. The counting of the day starts at 6 a.m.
Right.
All right, so therefore the 6th hour would be noon. Okay, so basically it says there was darkness over the land from noon until 3 p.m. Right? And that does actually match up with other accounts of the crucifixion, because it being Friday, right, that the Sabbath would be approaching at sundown, so it would not be appropriate for them to have left him on the cross past that time, because then it would require working to actually complete the process, including putting him in the tomb, right? So really it was the goal to finish it prior to sundown, so this period of darkness between noon and 3, so it was still earlier in the day, but it was their goal to finish it before sundown that day. So finally, about the 9th hour, which would be the 3 p.m., right, is you see what Jesus said. The phrase that was read, I assume was close to what was actually said, right? But then it provides the English translation here, right? So that phrase that goes, Eli, Eli, right? It means, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? As best we can tell, right? It would just be that, of course, Jesus was taking upon him the sins of the world at this point. So some people will say that, for that moment that the Father was like, all the sin is there, but also just the fact that he was going through this painful experience, all right, and say, why have you done this to me, kind of thing, just for that moment, all right. But obviously, God didn't forsake his Son, and he was ready to receive him up into paradise, and then to resurrect. So that was all happening, but at least for that moment, that this was what was called out. Right, and the reason that I would say that this was most likely the actual phrase is because when you look at the next verse, see it says, some of them that stood there, when they heard it, said, he's calling for Elias, right? Because you see the part that says, Eli, Eli, right? So in essence, it's, he's calling for Elijah to come and save him, right? Is the way they interpreted it. Now, I mean, as I read that now, I'm thinking, well, I guess they didn't really understand what he was saying then, because it says that the Eli part had to mean my God, right? So I guess they didn't understand the same language he was speaking, because they said, he's calling for Elijah. And that's why, like in 49, it says, okay, let's see whether Elias is going to come to save him, all right? He's calling for Elijah. Let's see if he's going to come to save him. Again, just kind of mocking kind of a way. And in 48, too, you see that they said, let's give him something to drink. So they got a sponge and held it up on the stick, and it's this way, it's supposedly to quench somebody's thirst, but instead it's got vinegar and it not water, so it's not going to go, it's really going to make it worse. So again, just kind of a torturing, mocking kind of way, even while hanging on the cross.
Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. And the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose, and came out of the graves after his resurrection, and went into the holy city, and appeared unto many.
The next thing that happens is really the end of this part, where it says Jesus actually gives up the ghost. I mean, that's when he died, right? And the other Gospels describe it a little bit differently than this, all right? Some says he says it's finished, and then he bows his head and dies, or this one just says he gave up the ghost. And now you see some of the things that happen after that, right? He says at that moment, in verse 51, it says, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, right? As well as the earth did quake and the rocks rent. this was a physical reaction to what had occurred, right? But the veil of the temple being rent in twain, it means it's torn in half, right? Is what rent in twain means. And so in the temple, there was a curtain that would hang down that separated the area inside from outside, and only the high priest was allowed to go in there, right? So in other words, it was as if there was some area that was cut off from the average person, right? If you will, the members weren't allowed to go in there. So it would be like if we had a part in church here, or some room that only the pastor was allowed to go into, and nobody else was allowed to go in there. It's almost like somehow he's more holy than everybody else, right? And so he's somehow different, or considered different than the average member. Well, it's symbolic here that by tearing it in half, it meant there was no more any barrier, right? Now everybody was able to experience Christ on their own. Everybody was able to make their own connection and relationship with Him. Everybody was eligible to go to paradise, right? So everybody was eligible to resurrect. So now everybody had full access to God at that point, right? So that's kind of a key point, is that you no longer had to go through somebody else to get to God, which is what we teach today, right? Is that, yes, you have a minister and a pastor and so forth, right? But who helps you? But you don't need anybody else to get to God. You can make your own relationship with God and your own connection. You pray to God yourself, and He speaks to you, right? So everybody has their own relationship with God now. And the earth quaking and the rocks breaking up, right? There was just kind of a physical reaction to this. And if you remember in the Book of Mormon in 3rd Nephi, right, it said that there was a destruction at that time, right? And so many of the cities collapsed and so forth, and the mountains collapsed and valleys raised up, and happening at the same time. So that kind of corresponds to this, that the earthquake was even bigger there perhaps than it was here, but there was a physical reaction on the earth at the time of the crucifixion of Christ, right? It was almost like God, even though it was all planned, still a little bit like God saying, what'd you do to my son here, right? And so that was the reaction to the earth, okay? Now 52 and 53, that actually happened 3 days later, all right? But it says the graves were opened, the bodies of the saints arose and came out of the graves and went into the holies and appeared unto many. This was the first resurrection that occurred, right? Because after Jesus resurrected, now everybody was able to resurrect. If you read this, it almost sounds like the actual bodies popped out of the graves and started walking around like zombies, right? I'm sure that's not what happened, all right? But the people rose from the dead, right? And they were seen in the city in some way, right? The people somehow said, wait, gee, that person looked familiar, that person looked familiar, right? I think it was more in vision, right? But it says that they were seen around the city, and this was the sign to them that people had resurrected. And up to that point, there was no resurrection. Nobody could resurrect before Jesus did. So when Jesus resurrected, it opened the floodgates. Now others could resurrect, and so in fact, everybody who died up to the time of Christ was able to resurrect it at that point. So that was the real first resurrection.
Now when the centurion and they that were with him, watching Jesus, saw the earthquake and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, Truly, this was the Son of God. And many women were there beholding afar off, which followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering unto him, among which was Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James and Joses, and the mother of Zebedee's children.
A centurion is, we've perhaps mentioned other times, it's like a soldier who was typically in charge of 100 men, therefore the centurion title, right? So this was somebody who was likely there in an official capacity to guard the proceedings, or again, you're putting prisoners to death. So that was really what was happening. These were supposed to be people who were guilty of crimes, even though Jesus, of course, was not guilty of a crime, but like the thieves at his side were being put to death. And so the part of the procedure was that they had an official military presence there, I guess, to oversee it, make sure that it was happening properly and that nobody tried to get in and interfere and so forth, right? So now he's the centurion, I guess, watched Jesus, felt the earthquake and felt that everything had happened. So you see his reaction here at the end of 54. It says, truly, this was the Son of God, right? Because it was different than any other crucifixion he had ever seen, right? So you assume he had probably seen other ones, and here's one where it got dark for 3 hours, and at the moment that Jesus died, there was an earthquake, and plus it had been already said that he was the Son of God. So in watching this, he said, wow, this really was the Son of God, just by having seen what happened. So again, you gotta wonder, somebody like that having been involved in it, so almost would feel like guilty at that point. Gee, why did I even participate in this? Right? They killed the Son of God because he recognized who that was. 55 and 6 is mentioning other women who, in the other Gospels, said that they attended the crucifixion, right? With such as Mary, his mother, Mary Magdalene, right, and others who were there. The women were right there to view what was happening, right? They were supportive of Jesus right to the end, and then they were the ones who were there when he resurrected, right? So these were also considered, disciples of Jesus. They were the female disciples, right? They were followers of Jesus, and they were very loyal to him, and so they were there even to watch him, as he was on the cross. I mean, including his earthly mother, but even the other women as well. Right? And if you remember in Gospel of John, it adds the part where it says that John was also there at the cross, and then Jesus said from the cross, to Mary, to John, that this is your son, this is your mother. In other words, telling John to take care of his mother, which then says that John took Mary to his own house from that time forward. So he took care of her because Jesus asked him to.
When the even was come, there came a rich man of Arimathea, named Joseph, who also himself was Jesus' disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. And when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out in the rock, and he rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre and departed. And there was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sitting over against the sepulchre.
As I said earlier, that the whole crucifixion process and the burial had to finish by sundown, right? So there was actually some hurry to get it done. And in fact, that's the reason, again, I mentioned this gospel, that's the reason that they went and they were going to break the legs of the prisoners, right, to make them die faster. And in the case of Jesus, though, they didn't break his legs, because they said, oh, he's already dead. But one of the soldiers said, well, let's just make sure. And he stuck with a sword in his side, and that's where all the blood and water came out. But the idea was that they wanted them dead in time to get the bodies down and get them in the tomb before sundown. Okay. Now, in the case of Jesus, I mean, he didn't own a tomb, all right, and so that's typically, I guess, how it went, is that if your family had any money, they would purchase land or a cave or a rock or whatever, and then that's where they would bury them and then put them in a tomb. Well, he didn't have that, so again, now they're probably thinking, well, what are we going to do with the body? So it says that Joseph of Arimathea came forward and said, listen, I got a brand new tomb that I've not even used yet, so he can go in there, right? And so Joseph of Arimathea is known for that he offered up his tomb for Jesus to be buried in. And he says he was one of Jesus' disciples, even though he was actually one of the Pharisees. See, so he was on the team that was supposed to be the enemies of Jesus, but he believed in Jesus, and him and Nicodemus were the two, right? That they were the Pharisees who believed in Jesus, so he was really considered one of his disciples. So he wanted to do him this favor and give him the tomb for the body to go in. Of course, they took him up on it because they said, this is great. This way we can finish this before sundown, right? We got a place to put the body, so by all means, take him away. So that's why in 58 they went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate said, no problem, to take the body off my hands. So they wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, but put it in the tomb. All right, and it says, and rolled a great stone to the door and departed, right? And so, you can see where all this would have been considered work, obviously, rolling a big stone and such, so they needed to get all that done before sundown. So they put a big stone in front of the door to the tomb. Now, the tomb, as you can picture, I mean, this is not a hole in the ground. It's rather, maybe it's cut into the side of a mountain, or just says here a large rock. In other words, it was something you walked into. You walked in and the body was just laid there. In fact, usually the way it's depicted is there's even a little platform, a little table that the body is put on, but it's wrapped up, and so I guess they would leave it that way. But
Now the next day that followed the day of the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember that deceiver said while he was yet alive, After 3 days I will rise again. Command, therefore, that the sepulchre be made sure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say unto the people, He is risen from the dead. So the last error shall be worse than the first. Pilate said unto them, Ye have a watch, Go your way, make it as sure as ye can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch.
The day after this occurred, right, it says, the chief priests and Pharisees, which were again the ones who kind of drove this whole process, said, they go to Pilate, they said, well, why do we still have a problem here, right? They refer to Jesus as the deceiver, right? And when Jesus was around there, he was trying to deceive the people. He told them he was going to resurrect after 3 days. So what's to stop his followers from going into the tomb and stealing the body, and then they'll come around, oh look, he resurrected, look, the body's gone, right? I mean, it takes dishonest people to think of dishonest schemes. You say that's the things that they're probably thinking that's what I would do. I would go steal the body and then say, look, he resurrected, right? So they're saying, what are we going to do about this? The Pilate, who was probably already has had more than enough of this, says to them, oh, listen, do what you got to do. You want to seal it up? Seal it up. You want to put somebody there to guard it? Do it, all right? But I'm not going to be involved. But go ahead and post somebody, post a guard. This way nobody can come and steal the body. So it says that's what they did in 66. And that's kind of a key point, all right, is that because of what they just said. I mean, if it was just left alone and then the body disappears, then somebody could have taken it. But in 66 it says, so they went, they made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch. All right, so they sealed it up in whatever way they did, and they posted people there to guard the tomb. And so they were going to guard it for the whole 3 days until the 3 days passed, because he said after 3 days he was going to resurrect. So if they can just make sure the next 3 days nobody comes and breaks into this thing and steals the body, then we're okay, because then the body's going to still be there.